Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jason Parkinson.
Good morning.
Good to see you, my friend.
Hey, thanks.
Looks like we have a few people jumping on. I know we had some pre-register and some on LinkedIn, so we'll just give everybody a few minutes.
Tyler, you've got to tell me how I can be in a room as cool looking as yours.
You don't make enough prep time to go sit somewhere else in your house and not in your dingy workshop, and you choose a background that's on theme with the presentation.
Love it. Love it.
Bonus points if you know where he's at right now.
Oh, yeah.
What is his background? Anybody recognize it?
Oh, you're giving away a lot of clues here.
Well, it's not a mystery. If you read my blog article I just posted on Tuesday, then by no means is it a mystery. Yeah.
Is that a glass slipper I see in your background?
Should have had one ready. Well, I don't really talk about the slipper. The slipper feels more like a metaphor for something else. And I didn't really grab onto that.
A metaphor for belonging, maybe.
Whoa.
Like media literacy 101.
That's good. That's good. So we got some other folks showing up. Thank you all for coming. This is great. I'm so glad to see you all. Feel free to show your faces too. It's always an encouragement for me in these digital settings to just see you, and whether you're nodding or, maybe you're just completely
I'm going to be eating the charcuterie plate that I made for the webinar though, Tyler. So
Fantastic.
I'll probably leave my camera off.
But that makes this all the fancier, Jay. I really appreciate that.
All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think everybody heard we are recording, so yeah, you can totally eat your charcuterie board in front of us, and we'll just record that for the internet later. Don't worry, no big deal. Thank you all for joining us and being interested in today's topic with Tyler about design and how it truly is more than just looking pretty. I feel like I have heard that in my world, talking to people about their projects. It's like, oh, we can just have Tyler come make it look pretty. So we're digging a little bit more into that today. Thanks for joining us. If you're not already familiar with Pixo, just a little blurb on us. We are a software consultancy in Champaign-Urbana that creates custom websites and software and applications that address unique challenges. And I'm Danielle Hendricks. I'm the account executive at Pixo, and I'm happy to help facilitate today. And I know the main star of the show will be Tyler, but if you have questions along the way, we're happy to help myself. And then I'm going to have Jenna also introduce herself as another team member that we can reach out to and have conversations with. Jenna.
Yeah, I'm also here to help today. I'm Jenna Fry. I'm the account coordinator here at Pixo. So I'll be handling all the details today. I'll be putting some helpful information into the chat for you. If you have questions throughout the presentation today, you are welcome to share those in the chat. I'll see them and we will get to them. If you'd rather ask your question directly, we will have time at the end for a Q&A, and you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask Tyler directly, or again, you can always share them in the chat. If a question comes up for you after you leave the webinar today and you'd like to connect with Danielle and Tyler, you're welcome to reach out to us afterwards and we can schedule some time to chat. I'll also be sending a follow-up email afterward with a link to our recording today, a YouTube link. So you'll be able to reference that and be in touch with us that way. And I think that's all.
Thank you, Jenna. And last but not least, I will turn over to Tyler to introduce himself and get started on our topic today. So take it away, Tyler.
Thanks, Danielle and Jenna. Yeah, and let me reemphasize, I am available to talk. If anyone wants to follow up after this and wants to spend some time together, talk a bit more about the subject, I'd be thrilled to do that with you. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're really flexible in that way. Thank you all so much for choosing to spend your time with us this morning. I really appreciate it. This is an honest privilege to share this space with you all. For those of us who have not met yet, my name is Tyler Edwards. I'm the senior visual designer here at Pixo. I've been a part of this Pixo family for nearly 8 years now, and I've been working as a professional for almost 16. And if it counts, I've been designing websites for nearly 20 years since I've been styling, MySpace profiles. So it's in my blood at this point. And as for Pixo, just like Danielle was talking about, we work on all kinds of digital products. But I'd really have to say that web design is our bread and butter. We have a long history of collaborating really closely with our clients to make goal-oriented, usable, and impactful websites that put people first. But before we go any further, I do want to hear from you all just a bit more, get to know you. And so whether I can see you on your screen or give me that little hand raise, I want to hear, I got a couple questions just to see who we've got with us today. How many of you here would identify as a visual designer like me, a graphic designer? Let me be also just a little clarifier. When I say visual design, it's synonymous with graphic design. Visual design is just the more modern thing to call it. You're not old or outdated for calling it graphic design, but just want to ride the wave of modernism. So anyone here a visual designer? Brianna, I know that you are, my friend. All right, we got one hand there. Okay. All right. How many of you work on websites in general? Maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're a content strategist, PM, UX, something. All right. Okay. And then how many of you are responsible maybe for overseeing just a web project? Maybe you're some kind of leader that works with a team, or you put a website together, you maybe manage a website at some point. Anybody like that here? All right. All right. All right, very cool. Thank you. And then one other, just purely for me. Will anyone be watching Roland Emmerich's sci-fi holiday classic Independence Day this weekend to celebrate rightly? Yes. Maybe you can watch it with me in spirit. Okay, great. I'm just really excited to finally flip that one back on again. Anywho, it sounds like maybe the majority of you here have been involved in designing a website in one way or another, right? So whether you've actively constructed it or you offered guidance, you have participated in the active web design. Now, when you think about visual design of a website, the visual design of a website, what comes to mind to you all? And feel free to just talk out here. We're hanging out, so I'd love to hear your voices. When you think about the visual design of a website, what usually comes to mind?
Colors and typography.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Layout.
Yep. Anything else? I'm very comfortable with silence. No,
I mean, those are shapes and white space. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Absolutely true. And from those things right there, a lot of that we're revolving around the look of a website, right? And that makes sense. It's visual design. So it's really easy to assume that the singular goal of design is to make your website look the way that it does and look good. Now, I'm holding my finger like this guy. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this phrase, whether from clients or from coworkers just over the years. But when referring to the design phase, many have said, all right, now you the designer, you'll just go and make it pretty, right? Just make it pretty. That seems to be our broad assumption about visual design, where UX designers learn how to successfully engage users and engineers write code to bring a website to life. Visual designers will just steal away for a bit to get Cinderella ready for the ball. And now you're catching the theme here. I am currently in Cinderella's ballroom. But so think about the design of your current website. How does it look? Is it pretty? And it might be, and that's wonderful. That takes some serious effort, and I'm sure that it has yielded some good fruit. But here's the deeper question we need to be asking: does the design help accomplish the goals your website exists to achieve? Does it serve the form as well as the function? You see, when we assume that design only concerns the look of a website, making it just as visually stunning as possible, then we stand to miss out on so much more. So this morning, we're going to talk about the kind of impact that intentional, effective, and strategic visual design can have on your website. What do we get when we are unwilling to just settle for it looking simply pretty?
So we'll begin by discussing how intentional visual design can better engage your target audience. And we'll look at how effective visual design can enhance your user's experience. And then finally, we'll see how strategic visual design can equip your website to grow and keep growing with the needs of your organization. So if that works for you all, let's roll.
And I'll just
all right.
just quickly interrupt, because I know we've said this before. When we dive into things like this, Tyler's going to be talking pretty broadly. We're going to have a very limited time. And sometimes formats like this, you don't feel comfortable really asking your own questions. So we're going to offer at the end of this, if you would like some time with just Tyler to do a design consult on your site, we're happy to offer that and have you set that up with Tyler directly. 15 minutes might be enough, it may not, but we're going to start with that and see if that is helpful. If you guys have deeper questions that you want to get into outside of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in. So how can intentional visual design better engage your audience? The very first interaction that many people will have with your website is, visual, right? I mean, before any action is taken, before any content is read, visitors will have just an immediate gut response to how it looks. And honestly, that's why we can be so concerned with making our websites pretty in the first place. You might create something that grabs their attention right away, and that's critical. But does the design keep their attention as well? That's the impact of intentional visual design that's putting the audience first. It's more engagement. So how do we get there? First and foremost, we do all that we can to understand who the audience is so that we can design from their perspective. So what does your website, or who does your website stand to impact the most? What are their needs? What are their challenges? What are they drawn to? How will this website serve them best? At Pixo, in our discovery phase, we take the time to meet with real people, to learn all that we can, to empathize with them, to put ourselves in their shoes so that every future design decision can be made from their perspective. And when we focus on designing something that looks good without considering the perspective of the people your website exists to serve, then they're just going to simply pass by it with maybe a couple of oh and ah along the way. But let me give you an example of how audience first design plays out. So recently, we had the opportunity to redesign the website for the University of Illinois School of Art and Design. During the discovery process, we learned that their target audience were, of course, high school students and their parents making a decision about which university to attend. So when meeting with these audience members, we heard over and over again that the primary thing they needed from a college website was clarity on the programs they offered. What can I really get from this place? What opportunities are available for me at your school? What can I study? What path aligns with my talents? And deciding what college to attend that's an enormous feat for a student. So that lack of clarity can really drive them away. Now, as we researched some of Art and Design's peers, we came across UCLA's School of the Arts and Architecture. And I'm going to pull out here real quick to show you what that looks like. Here's their website. So when we look at this, we can see that, it's a nice site, right? It looks good. The uniqueness of the composition really grabs my attention right away. There's an endless scroll of news content here that would presumably kind of keep me around to learn more. The navigation is wild. I've never seen anything like this. You click on this and then you've got your whole news timeline over here, but now we're in like about, and there's some over here and there's some up here, and it's a little wild, but it's innovative and it's interesting. But the thing that we're noticing is that it takes about 3 clicks to uncover the actual programs themselves. And the design may give us the right vibe about their college as a whole, but when it comes to the content it's not even loading. When it comes to the content that matters to the audience, it's just completely hidden. So for UIUC, our design brought that content to the surface. So here we have just a simple, bold introduction at the top. And then we get right into these tiles that feature all of our programs within the school. And you can scroll down and they're not unwilling to take up the entire space here. And if you want to learn more about these particular programs, all you have to do is hover, and then you get a little blurb about what this program means and what are the degrees that are available with it. And that link is going to be shared too, so you're welcome to go and poke around this website. But yeah, we want to make sure that we surface this content so that the target audience can really engage with it the way that they need to the most. All right, back here now. So another way that our design can engage our audience is by authentically connecting them with your organization's visual identity. So how do we balance design that both suits their needs, like we were just talking about, and it introduces them to your brand? You think about your brand for a moment of your organization, no matter where you're coming from. Your colors, your logo, your overall aesthetic. Was it designed to simply look good? No, probably not. It was created to communicate something, to communicate the unique character of your organization to your audience. It expresses something about your values and your services and your products that sets you apart from the rest. And now, more often than not, your website will be your audience's first comprehensive introduction to your organization, to your brand. The design then should capture and elevate your visual identity in a way that entices them to know you better. So to do this, when we typically do this in our discovery phase, our designers become students of your visual identity. And we seek to understand the decisions that actually went into crafting your unique look in the first place. What are you trying to communicate about yourself through design? We ask questions about what we need to do to hold the line of your guidelines of your brand. And we also want to know where we can push the boundaries. We work within your existing styles to create something that's both uniquely captivating and truly you. Now, some of you here, and I'm pretty confident about this, are a part of some kind of university, especially like the University of Illinois. And you may be thinking to yourself like, okay, sure. Our colors and styles probably had some good thought behind them when they were picked, but it was like 1920. Like, how can we possibly shape them into some kind of engaging website today? Let's give you an example here. So along with art and design, we had the joy of redesigning the Department of Dance website as well. And this was tons of fun to do that. They had the same predicament. As a school, they hoped to communicate a visual identity that was bold and experimental and modern, just like the dance that they offered, and that it was also very welcoming to all different types of people from all different kinds of background. But when you look at the university's brand, the tried and true orange and blue, it's hard to envision something within that realm. So we took all these styles. Here, we're looking at the university's core styles, and we've created a series of design palettes. Now, a design palette is a collage of your organization styles, like colors and typography and buttons, and they're organized to serve as the visual DNA for the entire website. So this is a very similar tool to style tiles, if you're familiar with that. You can see here, with these first 5 palettes we did for dance, we drew from Illinois' styles. But neither two of these are alike. None of these, all these aren't just hard orange and blue. Here's just the one typeface we have. Here's the one style that we have. The design palettes help us to isolate and pair particular styles from those guidelines to form something that is otherwise hard to capture with the brand at large. So when we collaborated with our clients from dance, we refined, we worked on it together to kind of pick and choose from each one, what's really working for us, what are we identifying with, and we formed it together to refine the final palette. And then we began to apply that to the actual design itself. And so we'll look at the design here. I'm going to reload it because I like the nifty animation at the top. So as you can see, when we scroll down this page, you can see that this isn't so purely Illinois. There's definitely that connection to Illinois, but we're elevating the very specific style and character and identity of the School of Dance, where it is very modern and experimental and expressive, and inviting all different kinds of people in. And so we can see that we don't have to be so terribly locked into something that maybe doesn't have a lot of that, the character that we once thought it could have. There's a link to this website too in the chat there if you want to follow And really, one really wonderful thing about this too is that we've heard just recently that that their enrollment at the School of Dance, the Department of Dance, is the highest that it has ever been, and that has been thanks in large part to this new website. And that's the impact of leveraging your visual identity to better engage with your audience. All right, let's move on to this next section here. Effective visual design can enhance your user's experience. This is critical. When we create websites, it's safe to say that all design, whether it's UX or it's visual design or it's motion design, interaction design, all of it is contributing to improving the user's experience. You know, visitors are using your website to accomplish a goal, right? So when visual design is only concerned with the look of a website, we can actually limit our users' ability to accomplish their goals. So how exactly can visual design work towards that end? So one way is establishing visual hierarchy. Effective visual design can actually direct our eyes to focus on priority content first. So maybe you've seen this meme before, but here's an example of how this works. You look at this, you read the section here, and then you move on to these sub points here, but then you find your eyes moving back to the small top one last. And it seems like that's tricky, right? Like, what kind of magic is that? It feels like an optical illusion. But our minds are actually wired to process big picture visuals like that faster than written content. So if we give the right visual emphasis to blocks of text through color and type size, spacing and composition, then visual design can help ensure that site visitors will engage with the right content in the correct order. And that applies to every tool and every component on every page of your website. So let's try this together. Have a look at this page right here. So this is the hero section of a landing page of a website that we did for the School of Social Work. When you're looking at this, what's some of the first things that you see? What's some of the first content that you read when you look at this section here? You can call it out, you're welcome. Academics, bingo bango. That's right. It's just bold right there in the middle. But you can obviously see that there's content above, there's content below. We have the image to the right, but our eyes are drawn to the introduction and the page title. We are orienting that we're using the design to orient the site visitor to, where am I right now? I'm on the academics page. What is academics? This is what it is. Here's a nice image to go with it to give me a bit more context. And then our eyes move down the page to this dark blue section to give us the submenu for academics, where we see, what am I going to get in this section of the website? I can learn more about undergraduate, graduate degrees and field education and doctoral degrees. And then we even move back up to the navigation at the top, which is just our primary navigation for the website. That's not primary for this page right now. We've landed on the academics page for a reason. But the way that the design draws our eyes to get to the right content first is a work of the visual rather than the content itself. All right. So another way that visual design can improve the user's experience is through establishing greater visual consistency throughout the website. So when similar design elements look different from section to section, our users are forced to relearn what those objects do each time they encounter them. So when a user first learns how a particular component works, say for instance, this event component that you see here, they will expect it to function in the same way the next time they see it. This is an event component from Medium. However, if that component looks different in another space, their initial understanding is going to be questioned. So look at these three different components here. This is the same component in three different spaces of Medium for this particular event, but it changes in different spaces in pretty frustrating ways. So pointing out here, we can see that, for instance, am I going versus yes at the top with these green markers here. I can use my cursor. Or we can see the location, the style of the location changes. Here we just have the subtitle here, but here we have it with an icon. It's a little different. And here we have it with an icon, but we also have the address itself. This overall style changes, the design changes, how many attendees are going. We actually have pictures here of them, little icons, but then we also have 35 UXers are going, but then here we have 35 attendees. What does that mean? our UX designer, Allie, she has talked at length about this issue. She refers to these as shapeshifter objects, and they are absolutely maddening to our users. So consistent visual design can eliminate this kind of cognitive overload by tethering similar elements together with the same style and structure each time. Now, visual design also shoulders the responsibility of ensuring that the website is visually accessible as well. All people will not engage with your website in the same way. That's just a fact, especially those who are visually impaired. So when we focus solely on the look of our website, we may alienate a large population of our users. Now, effective visual design takes their needs into account and works to offer a similar experience for all. So when we are working on websites, we do this through a number of different checkpoints as the visual designer itself. This is a team effort to make sure your website is accessible, and it's gonna look different ways across the spectrum of the team, but the visual designer plays a major role in this. So one of those things is we can consistently test the contrast between type color and the background color, making certain that the ratio between those two complies with WCAG requirements. We ensure that the written content can actually increase in size according to a user's device preferences without completely obliterating the design itself. Whenever I'm with my mom and I'm looking at her phone, I can see that she's got the type just blasted as large as it can possibly be. And she doesn't really have terrible vision, but just with age, she wants to see it a little better. We need to keep that in consideration when we're designing. We structure our compositions in a way that allows screen reader technology to follow the focus order and different landmarks in a way that naturally communicates the page's content. That doesn't have to just fall on the engineer. The designer should be thinking about that too when constructing pages. And we can actually do all of these things with the help of Stark. I don't know if you've heard of Stark. It's an incredible plugin. I use it for Figma, but they have plugins available for Sketch and XD and Chrome. Jenna just shared the link to their website. This is not a paid advertisement. I just love Stark, and they're super helpful. They give you a library of accessibility tools to just make sure your design is meeting the needs of all your users. But let me be clear too, and this is a big question when it comes to design and accessibility. Designing with accessibility in mind does not mean that our website must sacrifice a pleasing visual experience. It doesn't. These two things must never be at odds. When we keep accessibility at the forefront of our decision-making, then effective visual design can meet the needs of all users while maintaining the right visual impact. And when we treat it like an afterthought, that's when we'll jeopardize both the look of our website and our audience. We need to be thinking about it from the very beginning and making those decisions as designers along the way. So that's enhancing our users' experience. Finally, last example for today. If we approach the look of our website in a strategic way, then visual design can empower it to grow, can empower our websites to grow. But what do I mean by grow? You see, websites, they're living things. They are. We talk about this all the time at Pixo. They're always changing and expanding depending on the needs of their users or your organization or whatever it might be. There will always be more content to share, more pages to develop, more tools to include. But if we treat our website's design more like a sculpture, which visual design tends to do, and it's just created to be glanced at in a gallery, it's very beautiful, it's a part of our portfolio, then that overall look will begin to fragment and break down as the website inevitably changes and expands. So when we're working on websites, our designers work hard to exchange digital sculptures for replicable patterns. And so what we're talking about here is design systems. I'm sure you're familiar with this term. Maybe at this point, folks in our field have been singing the praises of design systems for quite a while now. But if you're new to the concept, don't worry. Design systems are basically a collection of styles and components and compositions and rules and guidelines for designers and engineers and the rest of the team to abide by as they build websites that can grow. So developing a design system, that is essential to creating a scalable website. So our designers will work in collaboration with our clients and with our UX designers, our content strategists, and our engineers to appropriately define these styles and guidelines in a way that ensures a website's expandability, which maybe is a word I just made up, but also it's longevity. You know, how long are these websites going to last? If they can grow, then they're going to last. Now, for the visual designer, that process really begins with developing a cohesive design language. So with a design language, we're organizing colors and typography and UI elements that can be coherently applied across the website and across the design system. We also establish guidelines for those styles to ensure that they maintain the same visual unity as they are merged with content. So no matter how many pages or components are added to the website, that same thread of compelling visual design will tie it all together. So here's a minimal example of the design language we created for our Pixo web template system we call Starter Kit. And this is only a fraction of the styles here, but this is going to give us an idea here. So how this works is we're looking at creating a system for our typography. What are the naming conventions of the different type styles that we have? What is the hierarchy of the styles and the sizes? And how is that going to be applied to pages and components? We have button styles, and not just a button, but we have all kinds of different buttons. This is actually just a little chunk of all the different button styles and link styles within the system. But what's the hover state of that button? What is its press state? What is its visited state? What does it look like when it's disabled? All of those things. Down here on the bottom, we have the kind of the hero section of a landing page. And so how does that change when content is coming into this? How does that look responsively? When it comes to also creating a design language like this, we don't just make this for a desktop website. We're considering all of these little pieces within the system as these responsive, adaptive elements. And so we want to ensure that they're going to have that same visual consistency, not only when content is added to it, but when it appears on all different kinds of devices, whether it's something as large as your 4K monitor or something as small as a web browser that's on a refrigerator for some reason. You're going to have that same visual consistency. All right, so when we take the time to approach the design of a website in a strategic way, when we're developing a design language that informs this larger design system, then we can be sure that the website itself is going to grow in step with the needs of the organization behind it, and really for years to come. So, ramble for a bit, and you may be tempted to think this: what is your problem with pretty? Like, do your websites even look good? Or are they just tools? Are they just utilitarian? I mean, are you saying we should just stop caring about the website's looks in general? No, not at all. I have no problem with pretty. I love pretty. When we design websites, we work hard to create elegant, impactful, striking, and honestly, downright gorgeous compositions every time. But the beauty of a website must first and foremost serve its primary goals. When design fixates on the look alone, then your website will inevitably fall short of its goals. True digital beauty is found in the complete package. Intentional, effective, and strategic visual design doesn't just get Cinderella ready for the ball. It will also get her to the ball. It will capture the room's attention, leave the right slipper behind, and usher your audience into happily ever after. So that's it. Thank you for listening. We still have plenty of time. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your questions. I love the dialogue with you. But let's talk. Yes. Any questions? Anything that's sticking out as you're hearing all of that? Anything, or maybe anything new that you're hearing for the first time? Anything groundbreaking for you? I'd love to hear it. I'd love to talk about it.
Tyler, can you talk a little bit about A/B testing of design elements and just, kind of an approach to that, or what you guys do when you're thinking about, implementing something and then trying to measure, is what we're doing working or not?
Great question. So this is one thing that I was going to talk about and did not get around to when we were talking about user experience and how it enhances the user's experience. One thing that it's really critical to do for visual designers is when we're designing, we also need to be prototyping. And we need to be prototyping in a way that we can get that design and those prototypes in front of audience members sooner rather than later. And so we like to create prototypes, and we can create prototypes in Figma as well that you can actually put up on a mobile device or something that allows people to click around on them. And we want to get that feedback to make sure that like it's not just about, you know, user experience is not the only one who should be doing this user testing. Visual design should as well, because it does have quite an impact. And so when it comes to, you know, how is a certain style functioning across a site, and is it clear that, say it's a button style, for instance, you know, is that button style actually grabbing the right attention, or are people just kind of flying right over those buttons? And we can learn that sooner rather than later if we're making them in prototypes. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
We're happy to chat about more questions that you have or other design questions you can pick Tyler's brain about. He makes it sound so easy, and I'm sure we can dig in deeper to any of these topics. So if anybody does have questions, yes, please. I think there's one in the chat.
Yeah, it looks like there's one in the chat. I can read it for you, Tyler.
Thanks.
Do you use focus groups to uncover how actual visitors use and interact with a site?
That's a good question. And Jason, Jason Starperd, I just love that name. And you were blessed with a really cool last name. So focus groups to uncover actual visitors. I don't know if we would classify them as like focus groups, but a lot of times when we're interacting with our clients and we're in a discovery phase, we work with them to identify actual audience members. And so we'll develop a group of people. So I guess you can call them a focus group, but not sure if we have like individual focus groups outside of that process. We develop a group that we really start to grow in relationship with, that we can really kind of trust their feedback and give a good example of the kind of audience members that we're going to have interacting with whatever whether it's a website or it's a mobile app or something. And so we lean on them a lot. However, there's also tools that we can use along the way to get designs and prototypes out there to get feedback at a larger scale. And so, oh gosh, I'm losing it right now. One of our UX designers should be able to tell you there's one tool in particular that we use that garners feedback. Applause, I think is what it's called. That might be it, I forget. But that we can get prototypes out there, and there are actually like people on these tools more broadly who are willing to test things and give their feedback and yeah. But I don't know if that gets at your question, or maybe you had something else in mind when you talk about focus groups. Does that help, Jason?
And just a little teaser with, you know, Tyler's been talking a little bit about the UX and how we have UX designers. We are going to be doing another webinar in a couple of weeks that's actually user experience focused. So if you're interested in that, we can certainly send you that information once it's ready. And I'm not sure the exact direction that Allie is going to go with her user experience chat, but I have no doubt it's going to be amazing, and it's very insightful to hear how that part of the process works as well.
Applause was, I am not crazy. Applause is what we were talking about.
Yes. After a quick Google, I've confirmed your
Yeah, and feel free to ask questions in the chat too. I know the Zoom world isn't always easy to pop out and say, hi, it's me, I have a question. You're welcome, just throw it in there.
Hey, Tyler. Sorry, I kind of jumped in late after a previous meeting that I thought would last about 7 minutes, lasted 27.
I'll hold it against you, Ben. Don't worry.
So please do. And you may have already covered this, is the reason I add that preamble. But how do you approach designing in a way that is, I guess the word is feasible for engineers and for, you know, the coders behind the site that's going to happen? So, you know, because anybody can draw pretty pictures and make things look great and say, oh yeah, we can do this or that. But when you get down to the actual building of the site, you know, it turns out, oh, that's way more labor intensive than is within your project scope. How do you kind of put those guardrails in mind as you're thinking through a site?
Man, that's a great question. I'm really glad you're asking it, because I had 30 minutes today to talk about the very broad subject of the value of visual design. And so there's this whole kind of secondary and tertiary atmosphere of that we can get into. And that's definitely one of them. So no, I did not talk about this, and that's why I'm glad you're asking. That is incredibly important. And so one tendency for many visual designers, and I know this was mine for a long time, is because we have the temptation to treat a website like a sculpture, and it's just like our nice little art piece that we want to kind of refine and craft and make beautiful and show the world. We also tend to do that in isolation. You know, we'll silo ourselves. We'll get in what I would always call, I'd get in my little train tunnel, and I'd come out the other side with some mock-ups. And that's going to, pun intended, derail that process that you're talking about pretty massively. So how do we push back against that? We are inviting engineers into the process from the very beginning. We are working alongside engineers that from the moment that I begin to create that design language that we were talking about, those kind of core styles of a website, the engineers are seeing that, and they're actually starting to implement those things because they can at that point. And then as I began to work in design, like contextual design is what I'll call it. So when we're starting to take those styles and apply them to actual content and components and sections to see how they're interacting with one another and how the style is starting to apply to a larger space, I start inviting them into that process. And I can do that even if it's just as simply as giving them a link to my Figma file and saying, I'm working on this. What are your thoughts? Does anything scare you here? Does this make sense? And then we also have consistent meetings for our team within the process to look through different components and different pages and to talk kind of section by section of, here's my vision for this, not only for how it looks, but how it's going to work responsively and how it's going to animate and how it's going to be interactive. I want to talk about all those things with all of the engineers and the rest of the team to make sure, like, here's my ideas. What are your thoughts? Will this work? And not only can they say, yes, that'll work, because really the answer is like, yes, we can do that. The only question is time and money. And so they can push back and say, yes, we can do that, or this would be really cool, but time and money, what are your thoughts? Okay, how about we pair, we bring it back down to maybe something like this. Oh yeah, that'll work. Let's do that. But it's got to be incredibly collaborative. It's got to be really collaborative. And then you, the designer, there does need to be an onus of, like, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to know the decisions and how the decisions that you're making in the design and how they affect that process. And so maybe you don't know how to code as a visual designer. Honestly, I think that's fine. I think our field is trying to tell you for a long time that visual designers also need to be front-end developers. You don't need to be. I don't believe so. However, you do need to know the language enough to get yourself to the bathroom, right? And so make sure that when you're making decisions, well, I know from past experience, this will affect that, and this might take more time. I also know that there's a JavaScript library that's going to allow me to do this kind of animation here and all those kinds of things. But does that help, Ben?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, man. If you're not a plant, but I really appreciated that question. If you got any more awesome questions like that, let them roll, baby. Yeah.
Well, little soft toss for you.
And again, feel free to reach out. I'd love to, if you'd rather talk one-on-one, if you got some questions, if you want to do, and I really love what Danielle was offering, if you want us to just for like 15 minutes, look at your website and talk about like, how can the visual design better be, better aid the process of serving your goals of the website. I'd be thrilled to do that with you, but just let us know.
Yeah, just like Tyler said, it's sometimes hard in this format to just unmute yourself and feel like you can talk to a group of people and you want that one-on-one time. Tyler is great, very welcoming, as you can tell from his chat today. And we're passionate at Pixo about helping people get there and have the education to help you as well. So we're excited to dig in more one-on-one if that is helpful at all in your website projects. But yeah, we are coming close on time. So thank you all for joining today. Unless you want to stick around and ask some more questions, we're happy to stick around for a few minutes. But we will probably just wrap up since I'm not seeing anything direct, and let you all have a few minutes of your day back. So thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, thank you all. This is great.